Today I want to go over a Rebel game in Platinum, and this is a very important video because this comp is pretty difficult to play in my opinion, especially when you compare it to the other vertical trait comps. So we're actually going to get a very weird start. It's going to be the Mbessa one. A lot of people ask me, how do I play this? What can I cook up with this? And we're going to see exactly that. So interestingly enough, we have Sentinel, Bruiser, and Scrap. So it's not that straightforward of a comp to just say, hey, let me go for Rebel. So I wonder what made them kind of aim towards that. What comes up to my mind, the first thing when I see this Wandering Trainer is, I'm praying I get Rumble because he's both a Scrap and a Sentinel. But you may have noticed already, if you think about Rebels, what are they playing? They play both Aurelia, Alawi, and Set, all three of which are Sentinels and Bruisers. So it is possible to kind of get there from a Rebel start. Another thing to consider, or another comp to consider, is the Enforcer build because it has the same idea. It's got Steb as a Bruiser and Loris as a Sentinel. But we could also easily go Scrap because we have the Scrap emblem. We already talked about Rumble, but also Trundle is a Bruiser as well. So lots of different options here. Personally, for me, if I had to choose perfectly, I'd probably go for a Scrap build. It's not the best comp right now, but if you get 3 emblems for it, it has to be pretty decent. But in this video, I want everyone to be on their best behavior because normally people tell me to flame away in the VOD reviews, but some of them say please be kind, and this is one of the ones where we want to be kind. I think I normally am pretty kind in my VOD reviews. A lot of people tell me like I hold back too much, but we'll see how that goes this game. So we have this start here. So we get a bunch of Rebels actually. So out of the 3 choices I mentioned before, we have the most Rebels. So out of these augments, what do we want to pick? Probably not Heavenly Smash. Definitely not Crimson Pack. I'm leaning towards Caretaker's Favor because, so the reason why you want to take Caretaker's Favor and arguably Pyromaniac, which was the first left choice that we saw before, is because generally in the early game, item augments are pretty good. The reason why is because they give a lot of immediate power and you don't have fully itemized units quite yet. So that's why I kind of like those. Out of these 3 options, oh wow, Starry Night, I would have taken All That Shimmers, which is the middle option. So we get a set 2. Okay, so I have to wonder, with Starry Night, you normally want to do 1 or 2 cost reroll. Generally, it's best for 2 cost reroll. Are we doing a reroll Rebel game? That's what I have to think about. So whenever you pick augments, you have to think about what they're good for. Generally, items are great in the early game, or an econ augment is great in the early game, and there's nothing wrong with Starry Night. I just wouldn't go for this comp, but let's see what they cook up here. They're actually going for a Scrap reroll build, it looks like, so we'll have to see how that happens. But stuff like Pyromaniac is really, really good in the beginning of the game, especially if you don't have any anti-heal effects to begin with. That way, you're able to just take care of that requirement and never look back. Okay, so they're actually going for a Scrap comp here. So the Scrap units that can use Starry Night is going to be Powder, Trundle, and also Ziggs. And none of those units are really any of the primary carries of a Scrap comp. It's generally built around Rumble and Corki. So that's why I don't really like Starry Night in that build. I'm not saying this is a bad augment, I would just go for other stuff. So with this start here, maybe we could go for some sort of Renata build with the Sentinel emblem and just use one of the emblems from the Wandering Trainer. Sometimes that's viable. You don't always have to use all 3 or even 2 of them. But right now, at this very point in the game, I think we are just down 1 augment, unfortunately. And I'll be honest, I don't really know what the direction is right now. So had we taken the augment on the right-hand side, that was the one where you get an item anvil every time you level up at 5, 6, 7, and 8. That's very straightforward because you get to set up a fast 8 and you just want to level up, get the extra item, and then you spike much later into the game. Pretty decent augment. It's not OP or anything. It's not horrible either. It's just like a average item augment that kind of scales. Pyromaniac is good if you get a bunch of upgrades early. That way you could develop some sort of win streak with it. So that wouldn't be my first choice either because we didn't really get an upgrade until after the augment round where we got the set 2. So I probably would have just taken the augment on the right, which gives a bunch of items just in a delayed state. Okay, so looking into this game right now though, we actually get Trundle 2, very nice stuff. Perhaps I'm thinking maybe could have gone for a Tristana reroll though. You could do Tristana plus Sentinels and then add in like a Corki to get the Scrap bonus. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I'm just not really sure what direction this player is going into from the Starry Night. In the next round, going into the carousel, they're facing off against Scrap, Visionary, Enforcer. That sounds like a awful combo for that player. What's that player's name? Delete or something like that? Yeah, delete some LP at that. I don't know what place they're gonna get. If I had to guess, maybe like a seventh at least. Does not seem like a great spot to be in. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of a worse combo. Like, there are very few of them out there. All right, at least they have the Void Caller thing, though, so maybe that helps them out a bit. But you notice here, get a nice little win. So 2-1 going into Carousel. Probably going to be what, like third pick? Actually, last pick. What do we even want here? We have a belt. We have a tier. They have scrap in their team planner, so I'm guessing they're going to go for some sort of attack damage item, maybe like a bow, a glove, things like that. You could also finish off one of the tank items you have, maybe like a Warmogs. That wouldn't be too bad, but I'd probably go for the glove here. Go for the Leona. They actually go for the belt here. Nothing wrong with that. Warmogs is good, as I mentioned before, but if I was hard forcing scrap, I'd probably go for the glove to build Last Whisper and Infinity Edge, which is what is in their team planner right now. So get the Vex and the Ziggs. Is this when they pivot into the Rebels? Yeah, you have to build the Warmogs, right? That's such a good item. I will say, though, that in a pure scrap build, it's actually not that important because you get a lot of shielding from scrap units, so you actually want resistances if you do choose to build some tank items. Going for the Warmogs isn't the best option. Another thing they could have done differently here is, instead of building the Warmogs, is drop the belt on the Gangplank and drop a belt on the Trundle, because you're playing 4 scrap right now. That means you could make more use of those other components and just get a little more scrap value in general. That way you use the traits that you play, because if not, then you're just getting like a smaller bonus. So that's one of the advantages of playing scrap in the early game. You don't have to play it the whole game, but you can use it just as holding random components that you're not really sure what direction you're going in yet, which is what we're kind of in right now, because we have like a lot of possible comps to kind of go for. Facing off against a Swain with the Jeweled Gauntlet, Draven with the red buff. This person's got some weird items that we're facing, but ends up getting a nice little win there. And then 3-1 going into the next round. I think one of the things that's going on here, and we talked about this in our previous Wandering Sentinel video, or the Mbessa encounter video, is that sometimes when you get this encounter, you get confused and you're just not playing your best TFT. This is definitely like an off-script type of game. So depending on the player, this is either going to be a really good thing or really bad thing. Based on this player's name, which is Stay in School, I'm guessing they like more structured environments, which means that getting something like a Wandering Trainer or Wandering Sentinel is not ideal because it takes stuff off script. Whereas there are other people who are more comfortable in off-script scenarios, but not as comfortable in more like standardized TFT. That happens not just in TFT, but for other things in life too. Maybe they're a killer, like scientific style cook where they have everything down to a science, and then every time you go to their place, something good comes out. But then when they go on Iron Chef and there's some like weird ingredient that they've never used before, they're probably going to struggle a little bit. You know, that's kind of what happens when you get this Wandering Sentinel, because we definitely saw it in the previous video when we went over one of these Wandering Sentinel games. And honestly though, like, I think this one's going okay so far, because it is like a less straightforward combo. Getting 3 different traits where you're not really trying to use any of them as your main, you're using them more as like secondaries, makes it even trickier. But they're going to be changing their team planner. Let's see what they add. Vex, okay, so they are just, this is when they commit to the Rebels during stage 2-7. I'm guessing it's because they have the set already. But again, with this augment, I don't know how it's going to work. When you play Rebels, you really need to go level 9 and you really need Jinx 2-star. And obviously the only way to get Jinx 2-star in most cases is going to be from going level 9. So I don't know if they're going to have enough money to do this. The set 2 that they have definitely cost a lot of gold in the early game. So compared to other games where you might be a little richer, that's just not going to be happening in this game. Starry Night does give, I think, 6 gold in stage 2 when you take it. So it's not like they got nothing from the augment. It's just not as much gold as like some of the other generic gold augments. But if you are committed to the Rebels, I would build a Rage Blade here. If you're playing more for scrap, I'd probably build a Last Whisper here. We have to see what they do. All right, so they're facing off against, was it a Ziggs, Tristana, Swain, Irelia. This person has a lot of 1-star units, so I think the Starry Night player is going to win. But we'll have to see. Okay, yeah, looking like a win there. So the set 2 has paid off. Like, I definitely would make it, but normally when you make a set 2, you want to win maybe 4 rounds, 3. It's tough to say. Like, the items weren't the best, but we're just missing like a ton of gold right now. All right, Menaces, no, don't have enough powders. Also doesn't fit any of the traits that we have. Slammin', I'd probably take Slammin'. you need some econ. And again, most important thing about this comp is going for those legendary units such as Jinx. Health is wealth, useless. Clockwork Accelerator. This one isn't bad. It's kind of like a Rage Blade, but for all your units, which is good in the comp, but you really, 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 really need Jinx. If you look at the data on how 7 Rebels performs with and without Jinx, it is just miles of a difference. I think it goes from 7 Rebels without Jinx is like a 6.0 or like a high 5s average placement. With the Jinx 1, you go to like, I think a 4.5, and then with the Jinx 2, you go to like a 3 point something. It's like that big of a difference there. So really, none of the other units matter that much. Like obviously you need a Lowy 2 star to kind of stabilize your board, but it's kind of assumed you have an Lowy 2 whenever you play this comp, because if not, like, I don't know, that's even worse, right? You probably cannot even make it to 7 Rebels if you don't have a Lowy. But a mistake I'm noticing between a lot of these games is just not slamming items. I don't know what they're saving these items for. The bench is also pretty heavy. By the time you pick your second augment, you should have like a pretty decent idea of what you're going, at least in terms of like whether you're doing like a fast 8, what units you're going to play. It doesn't have to be set in stone here, but I will say, unless you're playing like 1,000 games a set and have like a lot of experience with a lot of different builds, you probably should lock into a comp sometime during stage 3, preferably earlier. If you're playing something like Black Rose Flex, which a lot of people do use, like you should at least lock into doing like a strict fast 8 and all-inning for that. And then obviously flexing around the units that you do end up hitting. So I did notice they skipped an Aurelia earlier on. I know that they were not planning on playing Rebels at that point in the game yet, but if you're playing Sentinels, you probably should pick up all the 1-cost Sentinels, just in case you want to play 4 Sentinel during this stage, because it is very, very strong, just as like a generic frontline, and then you could flex whoever your backline is. So they drop in the Nocturne to play Quick Striker, and then go to a Hand of Justice and Rod Akali. Okay, so it looks like they're actually playing Akali, Nocturne, reroll, which I think is going to be pretty good with this Starry Night. I don't know if the team planner was reflecting that, but typically when you go this build, you go for 4 Quick Striker, 4 Sentinel. It's actually a pretty powerful build. Works best when you have artifact items such as Sniper's Focus for Nocturne is incredible. There are a couple of other ones, Rapid Fire Cannon, that really pump this comp up. But if you do want to commit to that, I'd probably just grab this Mbessa right now. Giant Slayer is also a pretty decent item in that build to give them some damage amp. And of course, Mbessa is like a 4-cost unit. Someone else ends up taking it, so that's a little unlucky. They end up going for a belt. I don't know what that's going to build. I would have gone for maybe a bow, go for a red buff. It's pretty flexible. But are they going to build a Morello? Is that what they're trying to do? Leona 2, probably build that. You could also go Academy from here. Honestly, like a Heimerdinger Sentinel build with Corki would also work in this because 1, you have this Leona 2 already to kind of stabilize with. 2, you have this, what's his name? Heimerdinger. He's one of the main characters of that comp. And then like the Scrap works well with the Corki, so you don't need to build as many items on him. So that would be like where I'd probably go right now in terms of direction. Obviously, you could still hold this Akali for now, but with the Hand of Justice, it makes it a little tricky. You're kind of committing yourself to some form of melee carry, but I just don't know what it could be right now. I really don't. Facing off against the Swain player, this guy actually has like a very strong board for this point in the game. 2-star Swain, level 7, 40 gold. 2 good items on the Swain. Yeah, gonna lose this round. Unfortunate there. And right now, like, let me know down in the comments. We do this for every video. At some point, I ask what place you think they're gonna be. For me, it doesn't look that great. I'm thinking maybe a 7th, maybe an 8th. I think we just needed to commit to 1 lane in the very beginning of the game, because right now we're going in too many different directions. It's like you're in a car and you're making a left, you're making a right, you're making a left, you're making a right, and then eventually you just don't really end up going anywhere, right? Again, if you were to give me a time machine and like go back to the very beginning of the game, I might have just like, after picking Starry Night, well, I wouldn't have picked it, but if I picked it, I probably would have just hard forced maybe like a Renata reroll. That wouldn't have been too bad. It uses up the Sentinel, that's about it. But it is what it is, right? But after that, like, there are too many weird things going on with this board that I am not quite sure what's going on. Let's see what happens off these orbs, though. Negatron, chain, some decent tank items. Okay, not too bad. A belt, a glove. That's tough. No clear direction in terms of damage items. Ends up leveling up, so they're not doing a 2-cost reroll. Okay, Archangel and Heimer, that's very nice. Unfortunately, this Hand of Justice really cramps the style of any Heimerdinger build because the only person that uses it is Jace, and that's a legendary unit. Probably not going to see him for a while. From all these other items, you definitely want to finish some tank items. You could build the Gargoyle Stone Plate. You could also build maybe like a Sunfire Cape. If you want to commit to attack damage, you could build Sunfire Cape and Even Shroud. That wouldn't be too bad of an idea. Crown Guard was built, so probably not going to be playing Heimerdinger. Okay, another Warmogs. I like the second Warmogs. I probably would have put them both on the set. And then builds the Last Whisper. If you were going to build Last Whisper, I would have done it through building an Even Shroud. Just because it uses more of the item components that you're like not really using as much. Because you need damage items on your carry. And if you're doing a backline attack damage carry, I would prefer having like the bow and the glove go into stuff like Giant Slayer and Infinity Edge, things like that. Probably skipping powered shields unless you're going scrap. Spears will, probably don't need that. Don't need salvage. Actually, maybe take salvagement. That way you could kind of rebuild this Hand of Justice. Inspiring Epitaph, not bad. But if you're hard forcing Rebels, then take Sisters. You just need Jinx. But I'd probably take Epitaph. Bronze for Life. Can we... There's got to be some Bronze for Life build that can be done right now. There are like 6 traits that are bronze right now. Probably could just take that. Yeah, that's probably what I would have done. Just done Bronze for Life and then play some random comp, but just run like a lot of these little traits that you get from the Wandering Trainer. And that probably would have been like a pretty decent game. Ends up building a Bloodthirster. Okay, so really going all in on this Akali. I don't know what's gonna, like who the carry is though. And then also builds a Last Whisper. So if you're doing Akali, Last Whisper doesn't really help that much. It's helping the... Okay, well, let's see what they cook up first. I just don't know what they're aiming for. Well, I know what they're aiming for. It says Rebels in the video title, but I don't know if they knew that at this point. It's kind of in the team planner, but not really. But if it was in the team planner, I don't know why Crown Guard was built. Crown Guard's not a bad item, but it's just not one of those like things you build when you go for this comp. Like you can build it in a worst case scenario, but normally I'd be building like Rage Blade for Zoe, for example. That way it gives me more time to find Jinx later on, because like it's just a random carry unit you could kind of use until you find your main one. Facing off against Corki 2, this person, and Alawi 2. Okay, that's pretty bad news. Someone already has Alawi 2. They're probably going to destroy us here because they have a very, very strong comp that hit all their units that they care about. It's actually much closer than I would have thought. But I actually would have loved to see how Bronze for Life would have done in this build. That one's more advanced. Like, I completely understand not taking it because it's one of those, another off-script thing. It's like, how many games do you get where you get Wandering Sentinels and then you also get offered Bronze for Life and you have a board that can somewhat use it? It's going to be very rare to do that, right? So I don't fault them for skipping out on it. Sometimes I skip out on augments even though I know they're good, just because like I'm not familiar with it and I wanted to climb that game. Sometimes like you could practice in a game and experiment with stuff. Some other times you're like, oh, I really want to win this one, so you might do something else. Because as per usual, like if you want to just win in the next like day or so, or like climb in the next day, you should only play stuff you know. You shouldn't really experiment or go outside your comfort zone, because you'll end up making a lot of like bad mistakes that you would never make if you're playing like your main comp or a comp you practice a ton. Let's look at the shop here. Nothing too crazy, nothing you really want here. I do want to find a time to like roll down, because right now this board, it's very, very makeshift. Like again, I don't really know what's going on with this board. There are some units that are like kind of the carry, but not really, because they have like awkward items on them. Like for example, this Akali, she's got 3 items. Like all these items in a vacuum work on her, but in combination don't, because one pattern they all have is that they're all sort of like defensive items. Like Bloodthirster and Hand of Justice both give lifesteal, so that's more defensive, right? And then Crown Guard, it gives ability power, don't get me wrong, but it also is useful because it gives you a shield. And when you have like 3 defensive items on a champion that you need to do damage, it's not going to work out the best. I'd much rather have like maybe 1 defensive item, at max 2, and then have like 2 real damage items on them. That way you kind of utilize them a lot more effectively. Okay. Again, I don't know what comp they're going for, so I don't know what anomaly to take. Maybe infectious anomaly, or like one of the anomalies that gives you 2 items would be an okay choice here. It's just very tricky. That's why I said last round, like I was wondering when they're going to do a roll down, because you generally want to find your carry before you reach the anomaly stage so you don't run into this problem. But it looks like they're going to be doing some Ezreal. They have an extra Ezreal on their bench. This augment's kind of bad on it. He doesn't really use the extra range that well. The +1 range is generally good on units that are short range. If you already have range, you just don't need it because, well, like you already have the long range. So it's kind of like a wasted anomaly. Let's see. Oh, Rumble. Rumble changes everything. So I definitely would not have rolled this round, by the way, because it's stage 4-6. So we're about to go into the neutral round. So we lost out on a little bit of interest gold. And this little power spike that we get is only going to help us for 1 round. If you were to roll, I'd probably roll on stage 4-5 or maybe 4-2 from this game. If you took Slammin' Plus on stage 3-2, you definitely could have done it on stage 4-2. But without the Econ Augment, you probably should have rolled down on stage 4-5 just to find someone that can use the anomaly, or that you could put the anomaly on. Because right now we're like down 1 Augment in Starry Night, and then we're also down an anomaly, because we have it on Ezreal, and it's not even that great on Ezreal, the one we picked. So yeah, I'm gonna have to say this game's at least a 7th, but I'm hoping to be surprised. Hoping. Let's see what comes up in this next shop. Okay, Alawi, very nice. I know we have Starry Night, but we probably don't need this Nocturne. He's not gonna really belong in this comp. Probably should just sell most of this bench and make interest, because we don't really need a lot of these other units. Like, you don't need the Nocturne. You don't need, like, most of the stuff on the left-hand side. What item here? Probably red buff. We already have a red buff, but you could take the extra bow, use it as a scrap item for Corki. It's not too bad. Do you want to roll here to get Alawi 2 and stuff like that, or do you want to go level 9? I think you want to go level 9. Okay, so they're building the Crown Guard for Rumble. I mean, it makes sense because they hit Rumble, but you know me and legendaries. Like, I never build items for my legendaries. Crown Guard is an incredible item on Rumble, don't get me wrong, but like the chances of hitting him, you're happy if you hit him anyway. So even if you have like suboptimal items, you don't care, right? Because it's more important to have the unit. Probably drop the bow onto the Rumble. You have some item removers later in case you need to move it onto Corki. That way you get scrap value, but able to actually pull out a win this round. Okay, I'm actually pretty surprised by that. Rumble did do some carrying if you look at the damage charts. In the next shop, nothing too interesting there. Can't really go level 9 yet. Oh, okay. I mean, you can, but when I go level 9, I like rolling. So this one's tough. Like, you won the last round. You really just need to roll at like 5-5. If we sold a lot of the units before, we'd have some extra gold here to roll maybe like 20 gold or even 30 gold. But the issue is we don't have that. So while it is normally good to level up to level 9 on stage 5, you need like some gold to roll down with, unless you're hitting some like incredible trait breakpoint, which I don't think we hit here. We hit like, we went up to 5 rebel. It's decent, right? But it's not like 7 rebel power spike, you know? It sounds a little risky, but sometimes I'm just like, you know what? If I lose the next 2 rounds and get knocked out of the game before I reach level 9, so be it. Because in the games where I do survive and reach level 9 safely, I'm going to have like 40, 50 gold to roll down with. I'm going to be hitting everything, and that's going to set me up for like a lot of success. But we've held this Nocturne on our bench for a really, really long time. It probably cost us like a ton of gold, maybe like 5+ gold already. And here, Tank Buster or Petrocite Rod, either of them work really. I probably would get the upgrade though. There's Corki. We probably want to pick that up. I just realized we're not running Artillerist with Ezreal main carry. So you for sure need to pick up this Corki. I'd probably get rid of this Heimerdinger. Don't really, oh, whoa, okay. So we skipped that. That's gonna hurt a little bit. Okay, so we get Jinx. we could fit 7 Rebel in now. You need to take out Heimerdinger, probably this Mbessa. We don't really care about Quick Striker. Quick Striker was good when we were playing around Akali, but at this point we could take it out. I know they ran out of time, so that's why they couldn't do it. But next round they'll be able to fit it in. We'll have to see how this goes. You know, they didn't get 7th. They already surpassed my expectations. But if I were to update what place they'd get, I honestly have no clue at this point. It really could be anywhere. They're somehow winning a lot of these rounds. I would think that they're a little bit weaker, but again, it's the Wandering Sentinel effect. Like, just because this player is confused doesn't mean everyone else is also. I have noticed this pattern, like every Wandering Sentinel game that I spectate, even up in like Masters and stuff like that, like there's so much confusion that you can sort of get away with making a lot more mistakes than you normally would. I'd probably take Dragon Claw there as well. You have a lot of Warmogs, so just getting a Dragon Claw for some resistances is pretty nice. I don't know how much ability power there is in this game, but it's generally a good idea to scout before you take that, but I'm sure there are at least a few of them. So here you sell the Leona, sell the Heimerdinger, drop in this Aurelia. Yeah, we could have saved the remover if we just sold it. Drop in Aurelia, drop in this Jinx, drop in this Zoe, get to 7 Rebel, and yeah, call it a day. Probably take out Vex also, don't really need the Vex. The board's not great, but it's okay, it's serviceable. Okay, they're doing the swap now. Oh no, one more. You need to take out the Mbessa, it's okay. I'd probably also item remove this set and put the Warmogs onto the Alawi. I know it's not, you don't want to stack too many Warmogs because then you just have like a bunch of health, no resistances, but you need 3 items on your main tank. If not, like, you're just losing a lot of value on him because Alawi is a much better unit than Set, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about like stacking the same type of item on someone. Just get the 3 items on them and then remove them later once you get something a little bit better. So now we should probably sell the extra copies of units that we have, sell the Heimerdinger. We're missing out on a lot of interest gold here. I didn't count every gold that was lost, but let's say you took Starry Night and we didn't really use it, right? So we lost a bunch of gold there already because we only got 6 gold for an Econ Augment. I know some of the shops were like decent because they had like the upgraded effect, but pretend that Starry Night gave us like 10 gold, but normally a gold augment, they give a lot more than that. For example, Slammin gives like 2 experience per round, and if we play like, 15 rounds, that's like 30 gold, and we play much more than that. But we're down like 20 plus gold just from the augment pick, but then we're also down another like 20 to 30 gold from econ decisions alone. So had only one of these mistakes happened, it would have been okay because you would have made up for it and had like a decent amount of gold to roll down with. But since both of them happened, it's going to be like a very poor game. This is one of those like poverty games. So I think what needs to change for this player is all the units on your bench, you have to ask yourself if you can actually use them. Because this set, let's say you get a set 3. Like, I know you have Starry Night, but it's not really going to help your board because you don't have enough items for everyone. Alawi is going to be the main tank still because you're running 4 Sentinel, and you absolutely need 3 items on your Alawi, right? And since you have items on your Rumble, items on your Ezreal, like you still have Jinx to itemize also. Like, there's too many things to itemize that you don't have time for this set, even if you do hit him to 3-star. Then with the Nocturne from before, I think as soon as you stopped having items on your Akali, you should have just ditched the Nocturne because like you're never playing Quick Striker again after that. So all the gold that was spent like not selling the Nocturne, it's gonna pretty much mean like you just don't hit Jinx, right? Somehow you have 2 Jinxes. I'd say that's pretty lucky. So maybe there's a bailout that's happening. Maybe in the next couple of rolls, you hit Jinx too. I've seen crazier things happen. Here, I'd probably take the Bramble Vest. You have the Warmogs and the Dragon Claw on your Alawi, so getting the Bramble Vest is very natural because you get armor, you get health, you get magic resistance. So you get all 3 of the important tank stats. Opts to go for the Bloodthirster for Mbessa, but I don't think we need to be running this Mbessa. She's like a solid unit as like a backup plan for your Rebel board because she gives the Emissary bonus and she's also a Quick Striker, so she buffs up herself. And that generally is okay. But I think in this case, like you don't need that backup unit. You have a lot of other stuff you could run instead. So you need to prioritize the units that you're running your traits around. Right now you're running 7 Rebel. So unless you have a Rebel emblem that you could put onto your Mbessa and give her the Rebel buff as well, it's not really worth playing around her. Oh no, we skipped Rumble. It's okay. Always use a team planner so that you don't skip important units because Rumble 2-star would be absolutely like incredible for your board. But here, like you could even swap out Mbessa for this Mel, arguably. We don't have the best items for Mel, but she could probably use this red buff pretty decently. Okay, I think we're out this round, right? There's no way we win this round. There's a Malzahar 2, Heimerdinger 2 on the enemy team. They probably have 6 Visionary with all these like Visionary bonuses. Maybe Jinx can Smurf. I don't even think Jinx can Smurf because she's 1 star right now, no items. Can Ezreal Smurf? Okay, so I think this game, you just needed a direction to go for in the beginning. And I think that would have solved all the augment choices, all the gold choices, pretty much everything. So I know it's hard at the start, but I saw that you put scrap into your team planner first. So you definitely did see a very viable option. I would have just hard forced some scrap build, and pretty much a lot of the problems you face this game just would have never existed because we would not have combined the Starry Night with the Wandering Sentinel portal. And that was like the big issue with this game. But other than that, in terms of like generic advice we could give this game, all the econ mistakes, like the Nocturne, I think there's like a Trundle 2-star that sat on your bench for a lot of the game. Like a lot of units, you don't have to use, like you're playing too flexibly. You need to just like focus in on a comp and just go for it because you're missing out on too much gold to play flexibly. And that's really hurting your like level 8 roll downs and your level 9 roll downs. But let me know in the comments what you guys all thought about this game. This was a game in Platinum. And if you want your game reviewed, I do reviews of all levels. Submit your games down below. Do it at the start of the patch though, so probably now is not a good time to do it. Wait until like, there's apparently a B patch coming out, so wait till the B patch comes out. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this, and I'll see you all next time.